So I'm with my wife and 4 staff with 3 cars in a 4-star hotel in Stoke. And I say to my wife, have you got any cash in your handbag? She says, no. I said, I'm really short of cash. She said, your DLA will have gone in at midnight. It's about £90, I think. So we drive to the petrol station and then it gets this £90 and I thought, well, that'll be enough for petrol and enough for some fags and some lunch for everybody till we get home. And she said, I'm waiting for a VAT payment. I said, well, I don't think it's due yet. She said, I'll have a look. So she types in the machine and she stands there and she says, there's something wrong. I said, what? She said, I thought there was nothing in this account, but there's £34 something in it. I said, let me have a look. So I had a look. I said, no, love. I said, that's not £34 something. That's £344,000. And we both stood there froze. And she said, challenge Annika. I said, what? She said, challenge Annika. I said, what? She said, I want a yellow Ferrari by 3 o'clock this afternoon. I said, yes, my love, not a problem. Hi, everybody, it's Fat Steve.
Hello, it's Fat Sandra, but I'm not fat.
And together, we're Spices Media. Hi everybody, Fat Steve, Spices Media, and a bit more of my mad life stories. One that's been asked about and requested a lot. It'll probably take 3 videos to get through this, 20-30 minutes, and it's about my VAT frauds. Now, surrounded by my friends, Harry, Hermione, Brittany, Chucky, with glasses and gloves. You have to think about that. And Abby Shooter. So, as usual, I've got to smoke. I'm only on Pepsi Max, but these are quite difficult to talk about, although they were exciting times. So, you'll have seen the video, hopefully, before this, where I'm trying to scrape together a few bob in a market in George Street in the old shop. Anyway, I had this idea, and my brother had taken over the Father's Bed business, moved to Talbot Square, and I thought to myself about selling electric adjustable beds, which he didn't sell. So I asked him if I could put one in the window and try and set up a little company. So I think that first little business was called Sleepability. And I knew that anything you did with disabled products were 0 rated. So whatever I'd spent setting up the business, any VAT, I could claim it back. So I registered for VAT, opened a bank account, and 3 months elapsed. I hadn't done very much, but I was probably owed about 300 quid. I got my first VAT return, which is called a VAT 100, it was then. Notification. It could be lunchtime, I don't know. Anyway, my mum had a cousin called Derek Schofield who had business for many years on Bolton Market called Derek's Carpets. And he told me a story about he had a VAT refund from a new shop, and when you fill in this VAT 100 you don't put the pence in. There's 2 boxes blanked out, and he made a mistake and he was claiming back £340 I think, and they sent him £34,000, and he reported it, told them, give it them back. And I'm sat there and I'm staring at this VAT form and I'm thinking, I've been a career fraudster, and that sounds interesting. I think they probably owed me about 340 pounds, something like that. So I thought I'd try it. So I filled that form in, sent it off. Somebody come to the shop, called verification, I think. They looked at the shop, they looked at the website, they looked at what I said I was doing. And a month later, £34,000 went in the bank. And I thought, whoa, this is okay. So what do I do now? Well, I simply calculated how big the business would grow in 3 months and played about with some figures and statistics. And the second claim, I think, was £55,000. And with that first one, I'd gone out and bought a car, like you do, big 4-wheel drive thing. The second one, I got a bigger car. Just at that time, I'd met a young woman at the market where I'd been doing the car boots, and we formed a relationship. And we started living the life a little. I think the third claim was 75, 80,000, and it just went on and on. So we started travelling. We bought a huge boat on Windermere. We lived in the Windermere Marina Village for a while, and we had a brother and his friend helping us with this boat. We'd go out on Windermere and sail down to some of the big hotels and have nice lunch and nice drinks, and really, really luxury times. They were the early days of the frauds. So eventually we got this boat. It was a 365 sports bridge, Sea Line. Got it moved to the sea, I think to Glasson Dock. We got married at Lancaster and had the reception on and around the boat with a marquee that blew away. And we set off on this boat. We went over to Isle of Man and then came back to, I think, Stranraer, or headed up the coast to Scotland. Each time these VAT payments every 3 months were getting bigger and bigger, and we had more and more money, more funds, more resources. So we lived on this boat and in 5-star hotels. Started buying different cars over and over, and it just went mad. And one particular time, this particular wife had mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, and she would kick off and we'd have problems in different ports all over. We was once coming back from Isle of Man in a storm, and I asked to go into, I think it was Whitehaven, and I called the harbour master at Whitehaven, and he simply said, "Is she with you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then I refuse you entry to a port." So we had to go up the coast a bit to Maryport, and we was in Maryport harbour for quite a bit. We'd sailed all over round the islands. Once we was at Tabot. We had a brother and his friend with us who was like the crew, and sailing along, and she'd come up out the hatch and she'd had a drink and she jumped off the back of the boat. So I had to do a mayday, and several boats headed our way. The Coast Guard was on the way. There was a helicopter up, and finally we managed to circle and get her, and her brother managed to pull her back on the back of the boat, and the Coast Guard ordered us into Tabot. So we went to Tabot, and as we got there, she got put in an ambulance, driven off, and we all got arrested. And so we was detained at some police station a few miles away. In the meantime, they'd taken her to some hospital somewhere, but the ambulance had to stop outside because I think it was Princess Anne was opening this hospital this day. and she was a bit too volatile to take in the hospital. Anyway, they figured out we hadn't done anything and we got released, so we had to get a taxi to this hospital and pick her up. So that's just a few of the mad times travelling around on this boat. Lots and lots of places. We got banned from virtually every harbour in the Irish Sea because of her behaviour. It was quite mad, quite wild. Once we went over from Isle of Man, we went to Ireland, and we didn't realise about the euro in Southern Ireland and English money in Northern Ireland. And red diesel for the boat was about 50p a litre back then in Northern Ireland. Now in Southern Ireland, we didn't know it was nearly £2 a litre, but in this euros. So we sailed in this estuary. If we'd have gone to the right, we were in Northern Ireland. If we'd gone to the left, we're in Southern Ireland, and we made that mistake. We got there with no euros. We had to get a taxi to a hotel that changed £300 into euros. By the time we'd paid the mooring fees and had some dinner, there wasn't enough to get diesel, so we had to go and do it again. And then we found out if we'd have sailed across the harbour, the diesel was a lot cheaper. So travelling round Ireland, we went to the Giant's Causeway. Great times up and down there. And then batting back over towards Scotland, there was Largs and the island where the curling tongs are made. I forgot what it's called now. Somebody will tell me in the comments. At Crag Island, I think. It's just an island with a little jetty that nobody's allowed to moor on it unless they're people that make the curling stones. Around that time, we pulled in and stayed at a golf club called the Turnberry Hotel, 5-star hotel, very posh. And it was about £1,000 a night for each room. And we're in there and we're out on the lawn this day, and these 3 helicopters were circling. And we're looking, and like one comes a bit low, comes down and lands on the lawn. And these guys in monkey suits with earpieces get out. And then the next one landed, and as the third one landed, all these security staff were walking up towards us, and out got President Bush. Who's that in the bins? Out got President Bush, who'd gone to Turnberry for a game of golf while he was at some conference in Scotland. And my wife, this guy comes up and they're looking at us, and she says, "Hey," she says, "what, is that a president?" He said, "No comment, ma'am." She said, "What would you do if I run towards him?" He said, I'd have to send for help, ma'am." And she said, "But you're a security guard and you've got a gun. Why would you need help?" He said, "Because when you got like 15 feet away, I would have shot you. And I would need help to carry your body away, then the president doesn't see it." So that was a mad day. A mad day. Lots and lots of crazy times up there. She kicked off once and got sent to a hospital on, I think it was Port Glasgow, somewhere like that. And they sectioned her. And she rung me and said, "Oh, please come and see me." So I went to see her at this hospital. And she said, "Can we go out for a fag?" So this staff in the hospital said, "Yeah, we'll come out the front with you and have a fag." So we're out the front, and all of a sudden they look away for a split second, and she's in this gown. So it's great, "Go, go, go." She starts running to the car, get in the car. She says, "Go, go, go." So I don't know if that were kidnapped or what, but it's what she wanted. We drove back to Blackpool, and because no Garstang, where I had a base in Garstang as well as the boats. Garstang Council got me off the old boat I was living on and gave me a flat. So we stayed there for a bit. The police came, searched the house and found her, took her back, and then I think 2 or 3 days later I had to go back up there. Another time with this lovely wife. We'd bought a house in Bolton, spent £175,000 on a company to come and put all designer furniture and decorate it. I think we only stayed in it a few nights. Anyway, she'd kicked off and she's in Bolton Hospital, and with 2 police officers. And I got a message. I went down to see her and see how she was, and she wasn't very happy. I went out for a fag. I came back, and the officers with her had sat down at the table and fallen asleep, and she'd handcuffed them together. And she'd been rooting through drawers, and she'd got this scalpel. So I walked in and I'm looking, and she's tapping this scalpel on her hand, and then I goes, and these officers woke up, and I said they're across the table handcuffed together, and she's waving this scalpel about. So they promised not to say anything if we didn't say anything, which probably this is 15, 20 years ago. So I think that promise is gone now. Eventually, psychiatrist came, chatted to her, and said, I don't think there's anything really wrong with you. I think you were just a bit drunk, and off they went. They let her go home. So apart from the houses and the yachts, we got bigger and bigger boats. We had a narrowboat built, and we cruised down to London. Stayed at Salthouse Dock, and then coming back up the canal, we were near Stoke, and she got fed up, and she said, right, that's the last lock I'm opening, and she threw the lock arm into the canal and stormed off. So then I got a phone call saying she was back home, she was back in Blackpool somewhere. So I was cooking. I've got bacon under the grill. I turned everything off and left everything and came back to Blackpool to find her, and never went back. Rung somebody up, posted the keys, said go and buy the narrowboat cheap, and that was it. So the guy rung me up. He said, there's bacon under the grill. I said, yeah, we're cooking me breakfast when I left it. So with this big sea boat, we'd had it taken across to Wisbeck, I think. And this time we went out into the Wash, and we were sailing down to the Thames. And we got some sea bug in the diesel. So we had to pull in to a little mooring, a little harbour in between Felixstowe and the one next to it, 2 big ports, I can't remember. And we pulled in this little port there, and we had the diesel. They had to take the tanks out and everything. And she had to go home for something, I can't remember what, and we knew that it was like 5 or 6 hours away by car. So she said, can we get a helicopter? So it cost £3,000. The hotel had a field. This Range Rover, a Land Rover pulled up, the guy put a big H thing out, his helicopter landed. Now it couldn't go direct to Blackpool because of the hills in Wales. So we had to go up the country and then across and land at Blackpool. So that was £3,500, something like that, just for that. So these were the early days of the VAT frauds, and every day we ate out, breakfast, dinner and evening dinner. As I said, there was my wife, her brother and her friend, so there was a gang of us. They were like the crew. We stayed in a hotel in Windermere once, a big one, posh one, pulled up in the boat. And I think it was Valentine's Day, and my wife and I sat at one table, and the two security staff we had. Now, because of what they'd seen at the Turnberry, they'd now got curly earpieces and matching monkey suits. So it's Valentine's Day meal, we're having a meal, and the waiter comes, and somebody comes with this violin, and he comes with a bunch of roses. And he gave her a rose, which was lovely. It was Valentine's Day. And then we hear a bit of a rumpus, and they'd gone to Laurel's brother and his friend, presuming they were gay, and said, which one wants the rose? So that didn't go down well. They were there to protect us if there were trouble, but the table went up, and all hell kicked off, and she kicked off, and it didn't end well. It didn't. I don't think anybody got arrested, but it cost about £2 worth of damage, something like that. Another time on Windermere, we pulled in this 5-star hotel for an afternoon tea, which was, I think, 25 quid each then. But she wanted champagne with it, so it cost more, and bottles of dessert wine. And we were sat there, we were all well pissed, and it had cost nearly £3,000 for this afternoon tea. So if you've seen the one with Sandra and Dawn and me, this was 15-20 years ago. So they're just a few of the stories of the early days of the VAT frauds. I don't know how long I've been going, but I'm going to wind it up there. And next time I'll tell you about as more and more money came in and we got more and more settled and started renting properties in Digamway, in Wales, in Uxton, in Chorley and around, and the crazy times where we would have 3 cars. And we had a Mercedes S500 limo, and the registration on that was S500 bed, because the companies were all about selling electric adjustable beds and mobility scooters. The other car was the Mercedes ML, which carried some of the staff, and the registration on that one, I think, was VAT 100, which I told you before. That was the name of the VAT form that we claimed. And I would always have a personal car, a McLaren, a Porsche, a Mercedes, and the registration on that one was nil VAT. So how about that, folks? So I said it's Pat Steve, Spices Media. That's the first of some of the stories of the VAT frauds. So I'm going to leave you there. Keep safe, everybody. I can have another fag now. I'll have a quick drink. Look after yourselves. Stay off that substance. Don't steal any VAT because it doesn't end well. It's a great time while it lasts, but when it all comes crashing down and you have to pay that price and you're in strange ways, that just proves that crime doesn't pay. Catch you all later. Pat Steve, Spices Media. Hi everybody, it's Fat Steve.
Hello, it's Fat Sandra, but I'm not fat.
And together, we're Spices Media. So bye everybody, Fat Sandra and Fat Steve, Spices Media.